Hello friends, good morning and welcome to the EduSat Network. Our specific topic of discussion today is part of our ongoing series on film studies, and friends, the topic for today is Portrayal of Women in Hindi Cinema. This shall be the first lecture on this and we shall be having more. Of course, I would like to introduce our subject expert to you, Dr. Manoj Sharma, Assistant Professor, Kirodi Mal College, Department of History, University of Delhi. So friends, with this brief introduction, I would like to welcome sir and also request him to begin our today's lecture.
Thank you. A very good morning to all the viewers. The topic of discussion for today is Portrayal of Women in Hindi Cinema. What we have seen over the years, that how women they have been portrayed across generations of the kind of films which have been made. What we see during the initial period in 1912 when the first film Pundalik was made, and thereafter Raja Harishchandra, which was made in 1913. Dada Sahab Phalke was not able to find a female actress for the role of Taramati for the film Raja Harishchandra, and a man called Salunke, he portrayed the character of Taramati in the film. So what we see initially is that there was a lot of reservation in terms of acting in cinema, especially the female roles. Initially they went to the women, those who were not considered to be of respectable families. And with regard to males also, what we see is that in many of the posters which I have seen with regard to the films which were being produced initially, that people were using their educational degrees also. They were writing BA, MA, etc. to show that they were educated, and even then they were into the profession of filmmaking. So these were the kind of initial reservations with regard to participation or acting in films or the other aspects of filmmaking. Thereafter, what we see is that a number of foreign ladies, they changed their names, and how they also part of the Indian film, became the part of the Indian or Hindi film industry. Initially, the various themes like mythologicals and devotionals and stunt films, etc., and a number of themes which were associated with the national movement, they were being made. And later some of the Indian ladies like Durga Khote and Devika Rani, etc., they also joined the film industry. So what we see is that initially during the period of the national movement, during the period when India became independent, before that during the colonial period, not many women they were active in the field of cinema. But over the years, how the changes in film production and film techniques they came about, how women they were being portrayed, the changes also came in terms of that. And in 1970s we also had a movement called the New Wave, in which more realistic portrayal of women takes place, because the way women they have been portrayed in the Hindi films is they are in the categories or good or bad. Either they are good in the sense that they are ideal, maybe ideal daughters, ideal sisters, ideal daughter-in-law, ideal mother, and on the other hand there is a vamp. So these two kind of different shades of women were there, and there were no grey areas in that context. Women they were not to be grey, rather they were to be in the binaries of black and white, good or bad. And this changed a bit in the later years when during the 1970s and late 60s, when we see that the new wave cinema, in which women they were portrayed in a more realistic manner. And later in 1990s, with the arrival of liberalization, globalization and privatization, the kind of changes which came in the film production, distribution, exhibition, etc., and how films they were being consumed, and how a number of films they were being made for an audience which were non-resident Indian audience or the diaspora audience, and how many of the films they were some of the films how they were being women centric also, and women they were also ready to perform in such kind of roles which were challenging for them. But largely when we see Hindi films, we see that there is a lot of stereotyping in terms of portrayal of women within the patriarchal setup, and how they have been portrayed in Indian cinema or Hindi cinema has been debated by some of the scholars. So, the feminist film theory basically deals with the portrayal of women in Hindi cinema, and there are two schools of thought within this regard. One is inspired by the American and the other is inspired by the British. So, Shoma A. Chatterji, who has done a lot of work with regard to the portrayal of women in Hindi cinema, and she has written a number of books also, she feels that the kind of films, the kind of portrayal of women in Hindi cinema is, from that perspective, Indian cinema or Hindi cinema was influenced by the Hollywood in 1950s and thereafter. So, the American school of thought, which is focusing on the psychoanalytical aspects, that is more relevant to the Hindi cinema, and the British school, which is comparatively the American school of sociological analysis, that was more important, and the British school was based on psychoanalytical theory. So, from that perspective, Shoma Chatterji, she says that the Hindi film characters, the female characters in the Hindi films, they would fit more in the American school than the British school of feminist film theory. So, these were the two important schools. One was the American one, talking about the sociological analysis, and the other was the British school based on psychoanalytical theory. So, Shoma Chatterji, a film critic and a scholar also on film studies, she says that the portrayal of women in Hindi cinema is more closer to the American portrayals. So, this is one aspect she has talked about. As you can see on the screen, that she also feels that we rely on Western constructs of feminist film criticism, and they are not very relevant for the Indian audience or Indian films which are being made or Hindi films which are being made, but they are fine for offering choices of alternative school of thought, as she says. Then the guiding of process of feminist film research, that is another argument which she has given. Then forming the frames of reference for specific issues that are global in character, and at the same time providing a platform for interesting and exciting comparisons between a Hollywood film and a mainstream Hindi film on the same subject. So, this is what she argues, that we should not over rely on the Western constructs of feminist film criticism, and we should rely more on Indian traditions and Indian culture, that how Indian traditions and Indian culture they have influenced the making of Hindi films, and they are the most important or the relevant aspect within the context of Hindi films. So, we cannot apply these kind of constructs directly, and we should not do it, and we should develop some kind of a cultural specific as well as the situation specific aspects. That kind of analysis or mode should be developed for Indian cinema or Hindi cinema, and some of the theories which are connected with the feminist film criticism, for example, semiotics, that is the study of signs or the codes, then as well as the structuralism, as well as the psychoanalysis. They cannot be applied to the Hindi films as they have been applied to American as well as the European films. So, this is one argument she talks about. Some of the questions which are there with regard to the feminist approach to cinema, for example, first, how women are represented on screen. That is one of the most important aspect, that the way women they have been portrayed on the celluloid, whether they are the homemakers, whether they are some professional women, the kind of impact they will create on the audience which are watching these kind of films. Secondly, how women's issues they are treated in cinema. Some of the important issues of women, the way cinema treats them, that is another important aspect which should be kept in mind. As you can see on the screen also, that is the third point. What does feminism mean to filmmakers? The filmmakers, those who are associated with making of films, whether the directors, whether the producers, how do they understand feminism? That is another important aspect which should be questioned. Then how the feminist agenda is manifested on the screen, because the way the feminist issues they have been visualized and how they appear to the audience, they can be two different things. So, in that context, how feminist issues they are manifested on the screen is another important aspect with regard to the questions which are raised on the feminist approach to cinema. Then how women characters they are being placed vis-a-vis the male characters, that is another important aspect. And lastly, what is of the women filmmakers and writers in depicting women's issues through cinema. So, these are the 6 important areas in which we can raise these kind of questions. With regard to the question of feminist theory, I would like to point out certain aspects, that feminist theory takes a distinct stance in relation to the way how women they have been objectified. Objectification of women is important. Then exclusion and silence of women in cinematic narratives, that how women they are a silent spectator, or how they participate in the film as a passive kind of character, how they are not all that loud and more active in nature. This is one thing which has been talked about in the feminist theory. How female characters they have been stereotyped. Stereotyping of film characters or the female characters in film is in the context that how women they will be either good or they will be bad. Either they will be in terms of they are devout housewives, or they are very devout in the context that they are more religious in nature, they place a lot of value in their chastity, they place a lot of value in terms of helping the elders of the family, they will be the ones who will eat the food, who will be the one to have the food in the last, because this is what is shown in cinema as well. So, in a way she is some sort of an Annapurna. This kind of female image is being portrayed in cinema as well. So, Laura Mulvey she has done a lot of work with regard to film criticism, and Laura Mulvey talks about how women they have been portrayed in one of her seminal essays, and she talks about the issue of male gaze, that how there are 3 gazes. One is the gaze of the camera, how the camera operates on the body of women, and how the characters in the film, how they see the female character in the film, and how the audience who finally sees the film it participates. So, at the same time 3 kinds of gazes they are operating. So, the question of male gaze that has been discussed by a number of scholars as well, and nowadays there is a lot of when Laura Mulvey made this kind of idea more popular in 1970s, and thereafter there was another important debate which raised on which talked about the issue of female gaze as well, that when males they have some sort of a gaze, similarly females they also have some sort of gaze. And later some of the studies were also conducted with regard to male gaze and female gaze. So, a number of studies dealing with the question of gaze, or how men they look at women, and how women they look at men, and how men they look at men, and how women they look at women. So, these kind of ideas they are there in number of feminist film theories which we see in recent times. Then there is another important aspect of the theory of absences and presences. It relates with the question of how there is absence of a certain type of female characters in films, that how a certain kind of female character is absent from the film, and there is a certain kind of female which is present in the films. So, this kind of question of presence and absence, this is influenced by the patriarchal values, how the patriarchal values they play an important role, that how women they are being portrayed in the Hindi films. So, the question of patriarchy in which males they are the dominant factors, how the males they are the decision makers within the family, and how women they are being subordinated to the males. That is an important aspect which has been explored by the feminist film criticism or feminist film theories, and they have made some kind of plea also that more and more films which are dealing with the issues of women and how women they should be portrayed in a more positive light, that should also be done. One argument which we are going to discuss is how women they have been stereotyped. In terms of stereotyping of women, we see that women they have been portrayed in a very stereotyped manner. Women they are considered, the way they have been shown in Hindi cinema, they are shown to be some sort of unidimensional characters. Either they are good or they are bad, they are in the context of black or white. There are no shades of grey in terms of presentation of women. They are not being portrayed in that context that they can have these kinds of shades of grey which are there in everybody. So this dichotomy was reinforced in popular films in which there was some sort of a distinction between the heroines and the vamps, and how the wife was portrayed and how the other woman was portrayed. So this kind of distinctions we find in the Hindi films. So the women which are considered to be good, they have to be docile, they have to accept whatever has been suggested to her by the elders of the family. She has to be domestic. Her sphere should be domestic in the sense that the home should be the ideal place in which she has to live. She is very honorable, that she is respected by the people, those who are coming in contact with her. She is noble and she is some sort of an ideal for others. And the other woman is wayward, she is reckless and irresponsible. So when you see that how the women they have this kind of dichotomy, this kind of binary in which they are being portrayed, and women characters which are good, they are considered to be some sort of an epitome of virtues and values. So they are symbols of these kind of ideas, and we have seen that how the image of Sita has been repeatedly evoked in many films, that how the portrayal of Sita, how the portrayal of women, in the women those who are shown in the mythological films, and these women they are having a lot of virtues, they are having a lot of values, and they are in a way portrayed in the cinema that they are some sort of a women which is ideal in nature, and all women, the other women, they should also follow her in her demeanor and behavior. Partha Chatterji there was a lot of debate with regard to the portrayal of, with regard to the question of women during the national movement as well, and one of the scholars, Partha Chatterji, talks about how the question of women, it was resolved during the national movement, how Indian women, it was being portrayed in 19th century as some sort of vis-a-vis the foreign women, and how Indian women she was portrayed as having some sort of a value in her. She was portrayed to be or she was considered to be some sort of a culturally and ethically moral, more moral than the Western women. So the question that how women they have to be portrayed in the public sphere, how women they have to come into the public sphere, the Indian women was portrayed in that manner. Indian women, the question of women was resolved in that manner, that Indian women was shown to be morally more superior to the Western women, and when she was morally more superior to the Western women, she has to follow certain codes in terms of dressing, she had to follow certain codes in terms of behavior, she had to follow certain codes in terms of following the advice of maybe their brothers, their father, then their husbands. So a girl, she has to be some sort of an ideal, and she could only become an ideal when she is following, when she is unmarried, she has to follow the advice of her father and brothers, and when she gets married, then she has to follow the advice of her husband and in-laws. So she has to take care of the family, as well as she has to, even if a woman is a working woman, so even then her working role is not more important, the role within the family is more important. even if she is going to office, then also she has to do all the household chores. She could not run away, she could not avoid that kind of responsibility which she had in terms of working at home. So she was managing both the things. If she wanted to have that kind of independence for her, that she is going out and she is going out to work. So these kinds of portrayals were there in Hindi cinema, and these kind of portrayals were also liked by the audience, as the audience was also ready to follow such kind of ready to accept such kind of portrayals. Another important aspect with regard to this is the institutionalization of patriarchal values. With regard to the institutionalization of patriarchal values, I would like to point out that these kind of ideas of loyalty and obedience, they were to be there with regard to her husband as well, and women, they were being portrayed as passive and submissive wives. And there were a number of films also, as you can see on the screen as well. There was a film called Dahej, which was made in 1950, then Devi in 1970, Pati Parmeshwar in 1988, and Bivi Ho To Aisi in 1988, in which some kind of ideals with regard to how a woman should be, how she should respect her husband, they were being given. And they were the ideas which were associated with the Indian traditions as well, that even if a husband is victimizing his wife, even then the victim wife, she does not want to leave her house, because she considers that once she has married, she has to leave the house only at her death. So when she will die, then only she will leave the house. So these kind of ideas, they were being perpetuated or perpetrated by the Indian symbols like Doli and Arthi, whether a woman, she will go in a palanquin, and then how she has to come out of that house in which she has married. So these kind of patriarchal values, they were being also institutionalized in a number of films as well. In these films, these kind of ideas, they were being given to the female audience, and female audience, they had to accept such kind of ideas as well, because repeatedly they were being portrayed in Hindi films. So this is what we see in the context of the patriarchal ideas which were seen in the films. So when we see the narratives of Hindi cinema, which are largely male dominated and male centric, and the themes, they have also been explored from the male audience point of view. So what we see is that the themes of the films, they are also from the male point of view, and heroine is, or the female protagonist is always secondary to hero or the male protagonist, and she does not have any kind of independence, and the way she has been portrayed throughout the film is always in relation to the male character. How the male character, how the progress of the male character is taking place, the woman character will be always seen vis-a-vis him, and she will be portrayed according to his progress. She will not have any kind of independence for herself. So this way, women's role, they were limited to the question of glamour, relief, respite and entertainment. Women, how they were being portrayed, that they were some sort of a relief, and you can see in many films which were being made, in many of the television advertisements, even where women are not required, and how they are being portrayed in some of the advertisements as well, where there is no need to show the female characters. So that is the question which is associated with the question of objectification of women, that how women, they have been objectified, and they also relate to a number of films with regard to a number of item songs which we see recently. There is a phenomena of item songs where a lot of skin showing is being done in Hindi films, and how women's bodies, they have been exhibited in cinema. So this is not a very good kind of a sign in terms of portrayal of women. Rather, it is more regressive in nature from that perspective, that if they can do more substantial roles, why these kind of portrayals they are being shown in Hindi films as well. So, what we see is that in many films, men they are shown as some sort of a savior, and women they are shown as some sort of a victim. In innumerable films which we have seen, in which a hero or a protagonist is going to woo a woman, and even if she is not ready initially, finally she will agree. And these kind of incidents, they could be related in real life as well, where we see that a number of men they try to woo some women or girls, and if they are unable to do so, they throw acids on them, they harm them in some way, because they have these kind of ideas that when male protagonist in that particular film was able to do so, then they will also be do such kind of change in their life can also take place, because they have that kind of influence from that particular film. So, this has also been debated by a number of scholars as well, that these kind of inane or insane kind of portrayals, where hero is showing the way he is trying to woo the heroine, should not be there, and because it is also some kind of creating an impact in terms of real life incidents. So, that is related the question of the notion of Indian-ness. What is Indian-ness? The kind of ideas which are associated with Indian-ness, that this is considered to be an Indian thing, and this is considered to be which is considered to be an un-Indian thing in nature. So, what we see is that the family identity of the heroine, it dominates her professional identity. Her professional identity is not important. In many of the films, there was a film called Hum Saath Saath Hai, in which we see that how even if the female protagonist was a doctor, but she was never shown as a practicing doctor, rather her homely role was reinforced time and again. And these are also reinforced by certain symbols like Mangal Sutra, Sindoor, and a number of wedding customs. And in many of the films, these kind of portrayals are shown in the Hindi films. And modern women, they are generally considered to be some sort of a threat to the hierarchical family structure. And if there is a modern woman, or the ideas or the Western ideas which are talking about the independence of women or the free will of women, so they are considered to be some sort of a threat to the structure. And during the course of the film, the women will be transformed or changed. She will become a simple and a sacrificing wife or partner, and as Westernness was considered to be some sort of a threat to the Indian family traditions. There was a film called Purab and Paschim, and in Purab and Paschim, East and West, that how heroine played by Saira Banu in that film, she was more westernized in nature. And during the course of film, what we see is that her westernization, she is being transformed, and this transformation at the same time is in the context that there is some sort of conformity to the ideal is taking place. When we want a particular woman to be in a particular way, then even if she was Western initially, she has accepted the Indian traditions, she has conformed to the Indian traditions, and thereby she has become more docile. She is not a woman who is engaged in drinking or smoking. She is not a woman who is interacting with other males. So, this is how her transformation takes place. She is now more committed to one man. Now, she is more committed to a life which is in a way trying to be more traditional in nature, and which is also associated with the notion of Indian-ness, the way it has to be portrayed in the films. So, what we see is that a number of studies, they have been conducted at post graduation level and in different universities across the world, and at the same time Indian scholars, they have also studied the portrayal of Hindi film, the women in Hindi films, and there is some sort of a consensus when we read those kind of articles which are associated with the portrayal of Hindi films, and at the same time when we watch the kind of films which are there at our disposal, that women, they are either the protagonist's mother, the way women they have been portrayed, as you can see on the screen. Either they are protagonist's mother, they are protagonist's wife, either they are love interest of the male, they aid male protagonist to achieve his goal, and screen time is less. So, even if women is the protagonist, even if women is playing the role of female protagonist, even then her role will be limited to that. She'll be either a mother or a wife, or she will be a love interest. So, all these kind of things which are associated with the female protagonist, they are in a way trying to help the male to achieve his ambition. So, the ambition of the male in the film is more important vis-a-vis the ambition of women, and women, they will play some sort of a secondary role, so that the male is able to achieve the goal. And this has happened in innumerable films, a number of films which you will see that these kind of portrayals they have taken place. And what we see is that in many of the films, the time which is given to a hero, the kind of scenes which hero has, and the screen time which is given to a female, they have a lot of difference. Either women, they will have 4 or 5 meaty scenes, 10 meaty scenes, or she will be more in the songs which are most relevant to the Hindi films. We see that in each and every Hindi films nowadays we will have 6 to 7 songs, and earlier also songs were an important part of the Hindi films, and the kind of traditions we have had, the Parsi theatre traditions, then the kind of influence we have from the folk theatre like Jatra, Nautanki, Yakshagan, etc. And all these kind of folk traditions, Parsi theatre traditions, etc., how they have been adapted to theatre and cinema as well. And we can also very well see that we have songs for every occasion. We have songs at birth time, we have songs at the marriage ceremony, we have songs for the death also, and for each and every ceremony we have songs in India. And how songs, they are integral part of the films as well. In every film, in every Hindi film, you will find that how songs, they are very relevant, and before the film is released, the music becomes some sort of a sellable commodity. The music of the film makes the film more popular, and people, they also listen to the songs on television or now mobile phones or on radio, and music systems which they have at their homes, etc. And when the song becomes more popular, that song is associated with the film. You come to know about the film later, because the music release of the film takes place maybe around 1 or 2 months, or maybe 3 months before the film is released. So, how song is an important determinant or an important indicator within the context of the Hindi films which are being made, and at the same time how songs in which women's bodies, they are being portrayed. Many a times we see that the songs which have been picturized, they have no direct relation to the film script, even if the film is shot in India. Largely most of the film is shot in India, but song sequences, they have been shot in Europe, maybe in Switzerland largely, many of the films, and in other parts of Europe or America, which is a developed world. So, this is what we see, that how songs, they become an integral part of the Hindi films. With regard to the portrayal of women as how they are the subordinate characters in the way that if they are not heroine, then they are vamp, and when they are vamp, either they will be a courtesan dancer, or they are a nightclub dancer, they are a bar dancer, or a cabaret dancer, or a prostitute, or a call girl. So, this is how women, they will be portrayed, which are not good, because the binary of good and bad, that will apply. So, either she will be good, or she will be some sort of a vamp. So, she will have these kind of stereotype roles in which she will have some kind of an alternative role function. So, this is how cinema categorizes women, this is how cinema stereotypes women, and this stereotypical portrayal of women in Hindi cinema has been criticized as well, that we should have more women centric films, and when some of the women centric films which have been made, they have been appreciated also, but largely they are in between. Even if you will find some good women centric films, they are not coming at very regularly, rather they are coming at some kind of intervals. So, this is one limitation with regard to the question of women centric films. Then women, they will always push family before their self, they will not consider their self to be more important, rather their personal interest is subordinate when she will think for the family. Her family is considered to be more important rather than herself, and she is ready to sacrifice her interest with regard to her family. And she is non-rebellious also. The kind of established customs and the social patterns which are there in the family, she is ready to follow them, and at the same time sacrificing for the sake of family honor or the social status of the family. What we see is that woman is ready to sacrifice for the social status of the family, even if she wants to marry someone, if she wants to go for love marriage, finally she will be counseled by the elders of the family not to go for love marriage, and to think about the social status of the family, to think about the personal lives of her parents, that may be related to the question of religion, that may be related to the question of caste, that may be related to the question of status, the economic status. So, all kinds of ploys they will be used to convince a woman, and it will be shown in the film that how she has become ready to sacrifice her life, and in the similar manner she should also do at home also. In every family, women, they should be ready to sacrifice their lives. So, the question of female interest, the question of individual interest of a girl is not all that important. The question of the honor of family, that how family will lose its honor, that is shown to be more important, and that has been one of the limitations with regard to then, that how women, those who have been portrayed in this fashion, how they are able to influence the other women as well, because they are considered to be some sort of an ideal with regard to this. So, in regard to the career orientation, I like to point out that women, they are considered, the way they have been portrayed in Hindi films is that they are shown to be some sort of an homemaker. They are a homemaker, they have to take care of her children, they have to take care of her in-laws as well, the kind of responsibilities which the woman has, she has to follow or take care of her responsibility. She cannot shy away from her responsibility even when she is a working woman. So, she is performing all kinds of household work, and she has to live in a joint family, and even when she is shown to be a career woman, even then her career interests are not shown, because the kind of portrayal which we have in films, the portrayal is more related to the domestic sphere, that is more related to the private sphere of the women. Her professional life is not important. Even if her professional life is shown, it is just some sort of a secondary issue for her, because her important concerns are largely family, maybe in the form of in-laws, maybe in the form of children, and if she is shown that she is focusing more on her career and she is neglecting her household duties, then she is not considered to be a good woman. She is shown to be some sort of a self-centered woman who is more concerned about her personal life. So, these kind of issues where the portrayal of women has to be ideal in nature, they are time and again shown in the Hindi films, and the patriarchal setup of the society is also perpetuating time and again, and at the same time the patriarchal setup of the society is demanding the woman to be shown time and again like this, because then only she will be able to perform the kind of roles which she has in the society, because she the kind of the role which she has in terms of nurturer of the family, that will be emphasized. Then another important question was with regard to the question of purity and chastity, that women, they will not have any kind of premarital relations, and even if she will have only one lover in the film, and she will be portrayed as following all the customs and the rituals with regard to the respective religions, and she will conform to the traditional values in terms of prayer, meditation or rituals, religion, marriage, etc. She will be God fearing and she will be performing religious rites in the various pujas which are performed in the temples or in the family. I would like to make a mention of a film called Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, in which Shah Rukh Khan he sees Rani Mukherjee in that film in a short skirt, and he is in a kind of dilemma whether she is the girl to be married or she should not be married. And when he finally sees Rani Mukherjee reciting a bhajan or a religious song, at that point of time he realizes that she can be his wife. So these kind of ideas are there in a number of films, that a hero or a male protagonist he is shown in some sort of a dilemma, whether the woman whom he likes could be his wife or not, and finally some sort of a change will be shown in that woman, or the woman's portrayal will have some kind of value added to it in the context that she is a more homely girl. She is being shown as a girl who is taking care of her parents, maybe she is taking care of her the kind of contribution she is making to the society in some sense. So the hero will realize that she will be more homely in that context, and then he realizes that she will be the ideal life partner. So this is how the portrayal of women takes place, and this is how women, they are being portrayed in the Hindi cinema, that a hero who is always in dilemma will later realize that this is the woman whom he should marry, because the way she has been portrayed at one point of time in the film, as I gave you an example of Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, where the hero realizes after seeing or listening to the song which is, or the Hindi bhajan which is sung by the female protagonist. So these are some of the important issues which are attached. With regard to the question of symbolism of virtue, how they are manifested, that women, they will not smoke, women, they will not drink, they will be non-flirtatious, they will not flirt in the film, they are not doing any kind of item numbers, the kind of costumes which they are wearing, they will be traditional in nature, and they are not interacting with men. So these kind of symbolism with regard to the way, the virtue of the female that will be portrayed in the film are associated. That all these things which you can see on the screen as well, that women, they are not a good woman, a woman which is considered to be homely, she will not be associated with all these kind of things, and she will be a perfect Indian wife, perfect Indian woman, and how her role in the family will also portray how her life in the professional world will also be. So there will be some kind of connections, but the family life will be more important for the woman. This is how cinema, they have portrayed women over a period of time. Then another important thing I like to talk about is the objectification of women, how women, they have been objectified, how they are considered to be objects. As you can see on the screen, tribal costume, rain dance, behind the bushes scene, framed in sensuous ways, appears in revealing clothes. So, this is how women they have been portrayed in Hindi cinema. Either even if the heroine she is from an urban background, so there will be some sort of a sequence in which she will have to wear some sort of a tribal costume, and how or even if she is not shown, other characters are shown, other female characters are shown in tribal costumes, where there is some kind of a scope of skin showing, whereas there is some kind of scope in terms of showing the body. Then the question of rain dances, as you can find in many films, that how the saris will cling to the bodies of the heroines. So, this is how women they will be objectified. And then you have the behind the bushes scene, where only bushes are shown. So, this is how women they are being objectified, and how they are also framed in sensuous ways, and at the same time how they are being shown in revealing clothes. So, these are some of the tactics by which women they are being objectified. This is how they are being portrayed in many of the Hindi films, and this kind of objectification that has been criticized by a number of feminist filmmakers and the feminist film critics as well, that there should be more meaningful and purposeful roles for Indian women rather than this kind of objectification of their bodies, and that has been contested by a number of film critics as well, and this kind of objectification found more voice within the context of the item numbers, as I told you earlier, that how item numbers which are not directly related to the film in a way, but how they have been incorporated to titillate the masses. So, they became one of the important considerations, they became one of the important determinants with regard to the films doing good or badly, because how these item numbers they became popular and how people they went to watch these kind of item numbers, that has been written by some of the people, those who have been associated with the issue of film criticism as well. Then another important issue is that how films they are the cultural products. So, there is a question that what is culture. So, that kind of culture can be seen in the context of the way Indian dresses they are being worn, the kind of food which we eat, the kind of makeup and the mental makeup which we have, and the kind of gestures, eating and drinking behaviors, as you can see on the screen, as well as moral and spiritual values. This we have already discussed within the context of women as well, that women those who are shown in the context to be more moral in nature, they will have certain kind of values. Women they will be more spiritual, they will be more devout, they will have a strong sense of right and wrong, and on the other hand the women those who do not have all these kinds of issues, they will be considered to be more loose in nature, they will be considered that they are more individualistic in nature, they are more influenced by the Western ideas, and those kind of ideas are not integral to the family life, they are not suitable to the family life. So, these kind of issues with regard to the films and how films they are considered to be the cultural products, because films they are not showing only some kind of a storyline or the script, they are not only for entertainment, but these kind of films are having some kind of influence on the masses, those who are the viewers of these kind of images, and at the same time how these films they are being received abroad, because many of these films nowadays, especially when we say nowadays, especially 1990s and thereafter, a number of films which are made for NRI audience or for the diaspora audience. It does not mean that the earlier films were not going abroad. As Avara it went in 1950s, it was known as Brodh Gaya in Russia, and it became quite popular in Russia, China and other parts of the world, and there were other films also which were shot in foreign locations, An Evening in Paris was one film which was shot in Paris, and number of films which were shot in Paris and at Paris and other European places, and how these films they were these films they went to these kind of overseas markets as well. But specifically in 1990s and thereafter, what we see is that films are simultaneously released in India and in other parts of the world. So because there is an audience to watch these kind of films, and how the film stars they have become quite popular across the world. These film stars ranging from Amitabh Bachchan, Shah Rukh, Salman, etc., and the female leads and the singers, etc., how they are going to a number of world tours, and these world tours across spanning maybe around 2 months, maybe 3 months, because they are visiting from one country to another, and how the Indian audience in other parts of the world, Indian diaspora, these people they get fascinated with these film stars, and how they are loved across the world, how they have become popular in different parts of the world, and they are at the same time promoting Indian cultural values and the culture in the context that our traditions, our customs, our eating and food habits, how they are getting popular, our dresses, and how some of the Indian personalities, those who are associated even with the film world, and how they are used by the foreign technicians, etc., how some of the foreign technicians, filmmakers, they came to India and they shot a number of films in India. Slumdog Millionaire was one film which was shot in India and which was based in India, which was made by foreign filmmaker. It became quite popular as well, though it was criticized on the ground that it was trying to show Indian poverty, but we cannot question that there is no poverty in India. There is a lot of inequality in that context, and earlier Satyajit Ray was also criticized that he was trying to portray Indian poverty in Pather Panchali, which he made in 1955. So these kind of allegations are there with regard to the portrayal of Indian poverty, or the portrayal of a number of issues which are associated with Hindi films. And films they have become an important vehicles of the cultural kind of continuity which they want to portray, and how these kind of cinematic images they are shown to the foreign audience by the filmmakers, and they are also a great source of revenue as well. When we see a number of films which have been made recently, the kind of money which they have made at the Indian box office, and similar amount of money they have also been able to make in the foreign markets as well. So films they have become some sort of a money spinning ventures. For example, some kind of figures which have come with regard to PK, that it was able to secure around 600 crores, maybe 300, more than 300 crores in Indian market, and more than that across the world as well. So the kind of money which is being generated by these kind of cultural products, that is also an important aspect, because filmmaking itself is an economic kind of aspect, and films are being made so that people, those who are investing their money, they can also make some kind of revenues or returns with regard to the films. Then initially what we see is that a number of foreign women they were also shown in the films of 1920s and 30s, and Eurasians and Anglo-Indian women's, and how they changed their names. Ruby Mayers was named Sulochana, Marion Hill as Vilochana, Rani Smith as Sita Devi, and Mary Evans as Nadia. So initially, because women from respectable families were not ready to work in the films, and filmmakers they had this kind of problems, that how they should influence Indian women to work in the films. And some of the Anglo-Indians and the Eurasians, they were ready to work in the films, and we did not have dialogues as well till 1931. So what was happening, that in 1920s and even early 30s, when these kind of silent films they were being made, so the female protagonists they did not have to speak any kind of dialogues. So they were ready, and even if they did not know Hindi, even then they were they were working in that kind of silent cinema. So even in the Hindi films which are made now, we see that a number of anglicized film heroines, those who will only speak in English, like Katrina Kaif is one, and there are certain other examples. So they are working in the Hindi films, though they are not conversant with the language, and they are trying to learn that kind of language now, and while working in the films they have learned the language as well. So we will discuss more about all these kind of aspects in our next lecture tomorrow. So thank you so much till then.
Thank you so much, sir. So friends, as sir has already told you, there's more to look out for, there's more to be covered as part of the portrayal of women in Hindi cinema. So I would suggest that you also watch out for the next lecture. And friends, with this we take your leave, and before that we thank sir. Thank you so much, sir, for being here, and thank you friends for watching. Have a great day.